Scott Rabalais from The Advocate jumps aboard. Scott, how we doing?
I'm doing fine, guys. I'd like to be out on the golf course instead of sitting here at my computer on such a lovely day. But we have to pay the bills.
Such is life, I understand. Now, you've been
Such
around.
is life.
You've been around for a good bit here. We've dealt with Hal Hunter coming in and winning a game he wasn't supposed to against Arkansas, and Les being carried off the field and not fired and brought back and then fired the next year. And then we've seen Ed Orgeron now beat a top 20 team in Tiger Stadium and then have his termination announced the next day. Where does this one rank in the coaching changes annals in Baton Rouge?
Well, I mean, I certainly it's unprecedented. I mean, to have I remember Curly Hallman had fired with 2 games left in his last season and coached the last 2 games and was never better, really. I mean, he was like much more. The weight was lifted, like a lot of people said it was, off of Ed, watching him at the press conference Sunday night. And they won those 2 games. And I think in that way that it might be good, certainly for him in that way. Obviously, never good to be fired, and good for the team. Though there could be less stress, less tension, maybe play a little freer. But yeah, it was very different and it's unusual. And to coach this many games, obviously, Woodward went through a similar thing when he fired Tyrone Willingham at Washington, and he coached the last 5 games of the season, I think. So long way to go, but it's going to be strange in its own different way. But that was different, and to see the firer and the firee next to each other at a podium was something I don't think I've ever seen at all. So that was one for the books.
What direction do you think this athletic department goes in? The big splash hire, or try to find a guy like a Louisiana guy that can really recruit this state?
Well, I mean, what's the old phrase? Past history is the best predictor of future events, right? And you've seen, you have to go with what is Scott Woodward's MO. First of all, there's nobody to bring home like Kim Mulkey, right? There's no LSU coach, LSU alum out there who's just killing it as a coach, and you got to get that guy back here. You could certainly go with Billy Napier, and apologies to Raging Cajun fans, I'm sure he would come if LSU, quadrupled his salary or something like that, tripled his salary, let's say, at least. So, but I think he's going to try to go big. I mean, there's all the names are flying around all the way up to Dabo Swinney at Clemson. I think that's unlikely. Looks like he's got a pretty staggeringly huge buyout at Clemson, according to USA Today's list of coaching candidates, of coaching salaries. But I think they're going to try to go as big as they possibly can, and if they get their first choice or their third or their fifth, I think they're going to spin it and say this is the guy we really wanted, kind of like Jay Johnson, who I don't think was really their first choice, but looks like a good choice. So it doesn't have to be the first one. You rarely get the first guy you want in a coaching search, or the first person. Kim Mulkey is an exception. Nick Saban wasn't Alabama's first choice. They offered the job to Rich Rodriguez. So how could that have turned out? So you never know. But I think they try to go as big as possible, because that's what Scott's always done. And a lot of athletic directors in the past at LSU that I've seen, Justin and Hunt, they've really been worried about the bottom line, about the money. LSU's, I've heard, worried about paying a buyout for someone, but clearly they find the money to fire the last coach, and they're going to find the money to hire the next coach, kind of whatever it takes.
How do you think Ed Orgeron's remembered in Baton Rouge?
Well, that's a great question, isn't it? I think ultimately fondly. I mean, look, the guy's always going to, people, fair or not, always kind of think of him as like, wasn't he in The Water Boy? No, he was in The Blind Side, playing himself. But Ed's kind of a caricature of what people want to think about Louisiana and Louisianians, and for better or for worse, fair or unfair, that's never going to leave him. But I think in a general sense, I think years from now, he'll be warmly embraced. Because I've always wondered, could Nick Saban come back and be introduced on the field in Tiger Stadium after he retires from Alabama and be remembered like the 25th anniversary of the 2003 national championship and something like that? And how would people react to him? I don't know. I don't certainly not the 20th because that's coming up, isn't it? But say the 25th, in 2028. I don't know, but I think Ed, because he's the Louisiana guy, because he's so much like a lot of people know, from this part of the world. I think he'll ultimately be pretty warmly embraced, and people will remember, man, that was something. That season was something, wasn't it? That 2019, and he did that, and he deserves some criticism, obviously, for a lot of things, but deserves some credit too.
Scott Rabalais from The Advocate is our guest. Scott, you've spoken to some players now and gotten some of their thoughts on their current situation. What was the general mood among them?
Kind of businesslike. I mean, one of the players, I think, is Damone Clark. They all kind of said good things about Coach. He's our coach. He's our guy. Guy recruited them to LSU, that sort of thing. And but a lot of businesslike. We're moving on. It was we got another game to focus on with Ole Miss. And like I said, I really think a settlement of this thing. Obviously, the next great unknown is who the next coach will be. But for now, for the immediate future, for this week, and moving forward within this regular season for these last 5 games, I think I think it'll help them perform better. I think it'll make things a little less tense. I mean, within the football operations building and out on the practice field, and I think that can only help.
Where would you rank this LSU coaching job as far as programs or jobs to have in this country right now? And if you were a head coach, what would be a reason you think they would turn that job down?
Why they would turn it down?
Yeah.
I think it ranks pretty high. People say it's a top 3 job, it's a top 5 job, top 10 job. I mean, there are a lot of ways to rank jobs. I think it ranks very well because you are the only Power 5 program in your state, and that's certainly very rare, especially in this part of the country. You are this is a place where 4 different coaches have won national championships over the years, 3 of them in the last 20 years, and no one else has done that. Only four schools since the AP poll in the poll era, going back to 1936, have won national championships with 4 different schools: Notre Dame, Ohio State, Miami, and LSU. And that says to me, as a coach, I can win there, and there's everything's in place to win. You got an athletic director who's willing to spend money and be supportive. You've got great facilities. You've got a great fan base. You've got a great recruiting base. And now the flip side of it is it's very hard. I mean, Dabo Swinney, they're having an off year this year at Clemson, but let's just take him as an example since his name's mentioned. You got a conference where you can probably feel like you can continue to dominate for a number of years, especially with Florida State still stuck in the mud, Miami looking like they're stuck in the mud, Virginia Tech is mediocre. Who's their biggest competition right now? North Carolina. Now the job will change here at LSU because everybody's talking about, well, you're battling now. You're looking like you're 3rd in the West at best and stuff like that. The divisions, I think, will go away. I think once Texas and OU join the conference, they're going to be pods, or there's going to be like 3 permanent opponents and 6 rotating opponents and stuff like that. And your goal is going to be not to win your division, but just to be one of the top 2 that makes it to Atlanta. Even if you don't, you might still make the expanded college football playoff. So just be in the top 3 or 4. And so that's pretty reasonable goal for LSU every year, I think. So, and of course, I think it would give you pause. The biggest thing would give you pause as a prospective coach is the last 2 guys won national championships and they got fired. But I think, and obviously, Jeremy, you know coaches better than I do. They all think they're the guy and they have the plan, and it's not going to happen to them, and they're going to succeed where Les Miles and Ed Orgeron ultimately failed. So I think there are probably more positives to the ledger than the negative.
You think this team found a running game on Saturday?
Well, they found something over there against Kentucky, but I mean, my goodness, I mean, you can run like that against Florida. I expect they're going to run the ball reasonably well against Ole Miss, right? I mean, not on paper, it doesn't look like nearly the defense that Florida supposedly had. Whether this jumbo package, Liam Shanahan, who we get every week, and we finally get asked him some good questions this week on the Zoom call, and he said, it's a combination of things. They're healthier. They're doing a better job of grasping Brad Davis's schemes. Adding the extra blocker that they use that Orgeron said was a new wrinkle they used. Obviously, we've seen Jack Mashburn's expanded role with the team and his blocking ability. So, and Ty Davis Price has just shown it. I think you want to get some more guys involved. I mean, he's had 58 carries combined the past 2 games, but aside from that, that's a very small negative. I mean, you got to keep feeding, and you certainly want to, I think, run the ball effectively against Ole Miss and try to keep it away from their offense as much as possible, whether Matt Corral's playing quarterback or not.
I know everyone's kind of pounding the table for Coach O right now, but what grade would you give both of these coordinators that he's hired this year to this point in the season after the Florida game?
Let's see. After the Florida game, I think I thought Jake Peets called a really good game. I thought that pass. I'm trying to remember who caught it in the left flat. They motioned right and they threw left. At the goal line. It might have been Jenkins. Okay, he caught 3 touchdown passes. It was Jenkins. I guess he caught all 3, didn't he? From Max. That was a really good play. And the 4th down play was pretty bold. That 4th and goal play pass to Jenkins. I'll give Durante Jones a C+. I might have said a little higher before the last 2 weeks, but they have given up 42 points the last 2 games, so that's not too great. But there definitely are improvements from what you saw last year. And I'll give Jake Peets a C, and it would have been a worse grade before, but I think he showed something this week, and maybe it's going to be proved that the gloves are off a little bit, for him. That the restrictor plate is off a little bit. That he can call. Maybe we're going to find out that he's going to be able to call, starting with the Florida game, more of what he wants to call. And certainly, if you give him a valid running game, that's going to make anybody a better play caller. So we'll see. But improving grade for him, and maybe a slightly knocked down grade for Durante Jones. But of course, obviously, one has to consider the fact all the starters that he's missing on his side of the ball.
Scott Rabalais with The Advocate. Appreciate your time, Scott.
Thanks, guys. Anytime.